Hi, everybody.
Hi there.
Welcome to another episode of Questions for Cathy. This is episode number lucky 13.
Oh, okay.
13 already. And instead of having a question come from a specific person this week, we are actually going to be continuing in a conversation that we were having last week. We mentioned the glycemic index. So that is going to be our topic for today. So I guess the question is, what is the glycemic index?
What is it? So, well, we thought this would be appropriate because we talked about macros, and the GI glycemic index really focuses on carbohydrates in the diet, particularly sugars, etc. So the glycemic index is a measure that ranks carbohydrates based on their effect on blood sugar levels. And foods with a high glycemic index, or GI as we'll call it, are rapidly digested and absorbed into the bloodstream, leading to a quick spike in blood sugar. And the low GI foods obviously are digested more slowly and will cause a more gradual rise in blood sugar. Glycemic index is a very useful tool, particularly for people that have diabetes, and can also help people eat healthier food choices, whether or not they have diabetes. However, it's important to consider other factors like nutritional value of the food and the portion sizes, not just focus on the GI.
Why is being mindful of the glycemic index of foods important?
Okay, so even if you're not diabetic in a normal diet, blood sugar control. So if you are diabetic or you're insulin resistant, borderline diabetic, choosing foods with a lower GI can help maintain more stable blood sugar levels, which is the ultimate goal of diabetes, keeping those levels pretty constant over the course of the day. The second is weight management. So low GI foods can promote satiety or feelings of fullness, reduce hunger, and it can also assist in weight management and help people prevent them from overeating. Energy levels are affected as well. So a low GI provides a more sustained source of energy, and that can be beneficial for maintaining those energy levels over the course of the day. Heart health, which is one that we may not always think of, but some studies suggest that diets that are low in glycemic index can reduce the risk of heart disease by improving cholesterol levels and reducing inflammation, two big factors in cardiovascular health. And then in overall health, a diet focused on lower GI foods, including whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and legumes, which are nutrient dense and beneficial for overall health. So it can be a useful tool in meal planning, but it's important to think of it as part of a broader approach to dietary management, including just being aware of the nutritive value of the foods itself, portion sizes, and individual health concerns and needs. So the glycemic index is a rating system that measures how quickly carbohydrates in foods raise blood sugar levels. And it's compared to the pure glucose that's found in white bread. So that's how they do it. Foods are assigned a GI value on a scale from 0 to 100. So low GI, which would be 55 or less, would be digested and absorbed more slowly, leading to a gradual rise in blood sugar levels, as opposed to having spikes. So that would be your whole grains, your legumes, fruits, and non-starchy vegetables, as opposed to the starchy ones. A medium GI level would be from 56 to 69, and that would be the foods in that range will have a more moderate effect on blood sugar levels, and these would be whole grain foods and certain fruits. Then you have your high GI, 70 or more, and typically these would cause a rapid rise in blood sugar levels and include sugary foods, white bread, and many processed snacks.
Now that we understand the scale, what are the different factors that can affect the GI of a certain food?
So there are many factors that will affect it. So the number one is type of carbohydrate. Different carbohydrates, simple versus complex, have varying effects on blood sugar levels, as we know. Simple sugars tend to have a higher GI, while the complex carbohydrates, especially those in fiber, are going to have a lower glycemic index. So, being said, fiber content is very important. Foods high in dietary fiber tend to have lower GI because it's going to slow down the absorption of the sugar into the bloodstream, leading to more gradual increase in blood sugar levels. The ripeness of foods, like the ripeness of fruit, okay? So the more ripe something is, usually the sweeter it's going to be. So for example, a ripe banana is going to have a higher GI than a less ripe banana, because as the fruit ripens, the starches are converted more readily into sugar. Cooking methods has another effect. So the cooking can alter the structure of the carbohydrate during the cooking process. For example, cooking pasta al dente, where it's firmer, results in a lower GI compared to overcooked pasta, which doesn't really taste that good, but has a higher GI due to more of a breakdown of starches.
That's interesting. Never knew that.
Right. The processing of food. Highly processed foods often have a higher glycemic index.
Right.
For instance, whole grains have a lower GI than refined grains because of the processing that removes fiber from the bread or starch, and other nutrients that will help regulate the absorption of the glucose. And also food combinations. So the GI of a meal can be affected by the consumption of foods consumed together. So for example, we usually say if you're going to have carbohydrate, have it with a source of protein or a source of fat to slow down the absorption of the sugar into the bloodstream. So adding fats or proteins or acids like vinegar can also lower the overall GI of a meal.
I didn't know about the vinegar.
Slowing digestion and absorption. I didn't either. So
knew about the protein and the fat, but
and then there are two more factors. Individual factors like personal metabolic responses. So a person's genetics, etc., can vary based on, such as your age, gender, physical activity, and overall health. That can influence how the body will respond to different foods.
Definitely.
Okay. And then the glycemic load, or GL. So while the glycemic index measures the quality of carbohydrates, the glycemic load takes into account the quantity of carbohydrates in a serving. Foods that have a higher glycemic load can cause a more rapid spike in blood sugar levels.
So that being, if even say it's a low GI food, but if you eat a lot of it.
It could, yes. It could cause a problem.
And if I may give my own personal experience on all of the above. As a diabetic person who also wears a CGM, or a continuous glucose monitor, for those of you listening at home, I get to see what my blood sugar does in real time. And as you mentioned earlier, like the ripeness of the fruit, as somebody who lives off of bananas, if that banana has a little bit of green, I notice my blood sugar does not go up nearly as quickly. And then like you said earlier about, your physical activity, a lot of cardio has a great effect on how you metabolize your carbohydrates, especially as a diabetic person. If I did spin, or if I ran, or if I walked on the treadmill for a half hour that day, my blood sugar is way better, way more consistent. So yes, even in non-diabetic people, don't think this is just exclusive to diabetics. Your physical activity, the combination of foods, what you eat and when, it's all relative.
Right. Yeah. In terms of the fruits and vegetables and the ripeness of it, etc. But just in general, because fruits and vegetables have a different carbohydrate content, a different fiber level, and how much natural sugar is found in them, they can have various glycemic index numbers. So your low GI fruits that would be 55 or less would be cherries, apples. We're talking about GI numbers like 20, 35. Pears with a GI of about 38. Oranges, which is kind of interesting, you would think, because orange juice would cause more of a spike, but oranges, whole orange, a GI of around 40. And berries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, GI of around 40 to 50. Then medium GI fruits, about 56 to 69, would be your bananas. That has an index of about 61. Mangoes, about 60. Pineapple, 66. Then you have your high GI fruits that are 70 or more. Watermelon, GI is about 76. Yes, there's a lot of water in watermelon. But it's basically sugar, fructose, and water.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Dates, which because that's kind of understandable, about 100.
Love dates.
Or 103 to be exact.
Yep.
And then you have vegetables, and you've got low GI vegetables that are going to be 55 or less. Basically, you're non-starchy. Your things like broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, spinach. They typically have a glycemic index of, like 15 to 30.
Yeah.
Then you've got cooked carrots, about 39. Medium GI vegetables, which would be 56 to 60, would obviously be things like sweet potatoes, but that's going to be lower than, let's say, white potatoes.
Right.
And that can range depending on how they're cooked also.
Yeah.
And the high GI vegetables, 70 or more, the only example I have are parsnips, which is not something that most people are going to eat on a regular basis.
Well,
but
speak for yourself.
Okay,
I
you
love them.
those. You like turnips too?
I do.
Okay, yes,
I do.
those root vegetables, they are, interesting. GI for about 97.
Yeah.
So,
believe me, I know.
Right.
I watch my blood sugar go right up.
Exactly, yeah. So besides the ripeness, how they're cooked, how processed they are, your whole fruits and vegetables, generally are better for us, as we know. They have a beneficial impact on health, giving us more fiber, vitamins, minerals, regardless of their GI values.
Right.
But then if you want to take it one step further, balancing these foods with other low GI options can help maintain those more stable blood sugar levels and overall health. So, if you're consuming a balanced diet that incorporates low and medium glycemic index foods, can help maintain stable energy levels over the course of the day, and that can help, enhance your focus, your productivity, overall well-being, helping you during exercise, while minimizing the risk of having dips in your energy levels.
Yeah, definitely.
So, in summary, the glycemic index of foods can affect how energies are released and utilized of the body. So, making it a really important consideration for maintaining stable energy levels throughout the day.
Who can benefit? Obviously, we have already discussed that diabetic specifically, but who else can benefit from this?
Also people that have problems with hypoglycemia, low blood sugar.
Yeah, even if they're non-diabetic people.
Yes, because, when I've worked with patients that do suffer from that, if they are going to have fruit, I always recommend that they have protein with it or some source of fat to kind of offset the breakdown and the release of glucose into the bloodstream.
Right.
So really, anybody can benefit from it, but I wouldn't place my whole diet surrounding that.
Right.
But
just something to be mindful of. Right.
But again, if you're doing more whole fruits and vegetables that are high in fiber, etc., you're pretty much
you're set.
You're set with that. Yeah.
Awesome. Insightful as always. And even knowing most of this information still took something away from it. I did not know that vinegar breaks down or reduces your absorption of certain things.
Check that next time you have a salad with vinegar.
Yes, I'm going to do some experiments on myself as we do in the nutrition and fitness field. We're our own best guinea pigs.
And by the way, so by this week, Gianna and I have decided to try the 6-day detox.
Yes.
So we'll be filling you in more about how we felt, what we felt the benefits were for us, how we did.
Yeah.
All right, we're at day 4.
Oh my God, are we on day 4 already? Yes.
Day 4.
All right, day 4. We got 2 more days to go.
2 more days.
Next week, you will find out all the details. All right, everyone. This has been another episode of Questions for Cathy. Stay tuned next Friday for another episode. We'll see you guys again next week.
Have a great week, guys. Bye.